Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live Boldly with Sarah. Today I have on Richard Laver. Grab your journals because here's kind of like the backstory that I just want to share with you, Richard. I always go back in and I like read up on my guests and who's coming on and what are we going to talk about, and like hearing people's stories. And yours is one that I remember a little bit of, by the way. My dad worked for IBM, so we're going to dive into like the things that happened on this plane.
Okay.
For those of you that don't know, just grab your journals and listen to this. And then I was texting my family chat last night about your story. They love hearing about my guests, and they were like, "Yo, I can't wait to hear this one." So thank you for coming on. I just want to tell you that what I read up on you last night was inspiration for me to just like, I don't know, I just get giddy on stuff like this. So I'm super excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be
Thank
with
you.
you.
Thank you for your time. So let's dive in. Tell us a little bit about you. I wish we would have just pressed record like 2 seconds ago, the
Mhm.
snippet that you said. But and I want to know, like, tell our listeners about you. Who is Richard? Richard sitting in his car right now as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I think we change so much through our lives. I think is this time I'm really starting to learn that if a lot of listeners are tuning in through tragedy and through sort of trauma and overcoming certain things, but really what I've learned in this last business I started, coming from a business that I started to save my daughter's life, is I realized that my therapy that of course we go in and out of therapy and different things like that, but my therapy is, and I've worked through things in life through my storytelling and business.
Mhm.
So this is something I know people have heard a lot of things about me, but I've never told this to anybody until very recently. I've never created a business ever unless I was in complete pain. Like an artist paints something, or a writer writes, or the greatest stories ever told were usually told like that. They just don't come. Like the Pursuit of Happiness story was not written in Palm Beach, where I am right now, sitting on a yacht, having the perfect life and everything going well, right? So
Yeah.
these depths of a little bit of pain, or overcoming it and then having another brush with learning about yourself. That's what got me into the place of starting my latest business. But that was a big thing for me to learn. I mean, my story is another thing I learned was that the plane crash was chapter two. I really came to understand that the way I grew up was not very normal, right? I came from an Australian family. My father was a really good man. I came from a big tennis family. My cousin won, all the majors, and then he immigrated our family to the United States. So my dad started this resort in Delray Beach, Florida, called Lavers, and it was a great resort. But I felt like if you were to put it in modern day times, it would be like um, I'm like a resort owner's kid, and my dad, everyone wanted to be around him because he was the hard partying Australian. And
Mhm.
I found myself many nights sitting in bars waiting for my dad to get um, done talking to people, etc. And during that process, my family divorced. And I guess as I was so focused on my career as I was getting older, the real events for me were some of the stuff your listeners will hear about. And just tell me to pause when you want to ask other questions. But bottom line is, by the time I was in one of the worst plane crashes in U.S. history, I was already set up for trouble in life. Like there, I was acting out in school. I didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't get enough attention. I was begging for my mother's attention. My mother was like a Queen of England type of woman. And so when my father and mother would walk in a clubhouse, they were just sort of that couple.
Mhm.
And they were amazing. But as parents, they just weren't sort of probably they realized, or my mother does now, that maybe they weren't meant to be parents, right, at that stage. And so I was set up for a little bit of things were not going so well by the time I was 12. And then when my plane crashed, then my whole world turned upside down completely.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I've lived through my story as well, many traumas in my life. And it takes unpacking those traumas that you start to realize, wow, wait, that actually wasn't the first one. There were other things that were leading up to that in order for that to happen, which really brings you to who you are today. So can I ask you a little bit of a personal question that might sound a little wild, but how old are you today?
51.
You're 50. Okay, because I'm 50. And so, and I don't know what it is. And I bring that up because like literally I don't know what it is, but when I hit 50, it was this other realization of like, whoa, I've had a hard life and I've created a lot of really cool stuff out of my heart, which you have too. So let's dive into the plane crash. So what happened when you were 12 years old? Because I remember this because we're the same age. So I remember this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was just, you know, my father was trying to reconnect with me. I think he realized at the end of his life that he was 44 and he died on the plane. And he was realizing like a lot of men don't do this. They don't dig deep and start to realize maybe this is not what I'm supposed to be creating. Right. And so yeah, he was drinking a little bit. He was never, abusive. But Australians, if you did something wrong, they use the belts on you a little bit here and there. But he was a good guy, and so he was trying to reconnect. So he was flying with me around the country, and for tennis because I was an elite junior tennis player, and we were going to nationals in California, and my dad was going to accompany me, and I was starting to win a lot of tournaments and stuff, and but prior to that he wasn't showing up at baseball games, etc. And so we were connecting a bit, and I had this premonition 2 days before, and then the next night I had a dream that we were going to crash. So I was at this restaurant and I was sitting down with my mother, and I said to her, I go, we're not going to make it on the plane tomorrow. And she said, what do you mean? She goes, you've flown around the world, you've flown to Wimbledon here and there, and so I told my mother, I said, we're not, I just don't think we're going to make it. So when the next day in practice, in Australia, you can't do two things. You got to act like a gentleman. You can't steal. You can't lie. Like there's just certain characteristics of old time Australians that are very true. And one of them was, if you're breaking rackets and swearing and acting like a brat, you're not going to tournaments. You're in your room, etc. So I knew that. So I went to break all my tennis rackets the next day. My father went into the room and he said, son, you're not going on this flight. You're out, you're done. And so I was like, yes, I was celebrating because I was like, I knew the plane was going to crash.
Wow.
So about 2.5 hours before the flight, my dad came in and said, I don't know why you acted that way, but we're going. And he grabbed my arm. And so went on the flight, blue skies, everything was perfect. And I was sitting at my seat and my dad was having a rum and Coke. And back in the day, if you were in the tail section of a plane, it was for smokers, and my father had started smoking again when he was 44, so he just started again. And so that all the survivors of the crash were in the smoking section in the tail. So I'm looking out the window and I see the storm cell, and I just kind of had this bad feeling. I went to the bathroom, I put water on my face, and all of a sudden I had this chill and this calmness and said, it's going to happen and you're going to live. It was weird. So it's a true story.
Whoa.
And so I went back to my seat, and the stewardess came by and said, we don't know if we're going to divert from Dallas, Texas. It was an L-1011, which is a super jet, 747 type jet. Or we're going to go through this storm. And it's called a microburst. You couldn't see it back then because they didn't have Doppler radar in 1985. I was 12 years old. And so anyways, the stewardess comes by and says, hey, do you have your seatbelt on? I lied and said I did because I put a blanket over me. Something told me not to put my seatbelt on. And so that's what saved my life. So when the plane crashed and we went through the storm, the pilot decided not to divert to Atlanta, went through the storm. The plane split right in front of my eyes. Everyone from the pilot to me died. Everyone in my row died. I flew out of the plane 300 miles an hour, about 50 yards, and the only person really in history to fly right through the direct explosion and live. And then I was lying on the ground and couldn't speak or move. And that was my life started on that ground right there, my new life.
Wow. So that's yeah. Well,
Sorry, it's a
so
little.
no, I have so many things that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah,
So many different directions in this because I
yeah,
have
yeah.
so many premonitions myself in my life,
Mhm.
including don't move out to the West Coast. I woke up in the middle of the night, which is where everything happened, all the trauma happened in my life, where
Yeah.
I had this dream. And interestingly enough, it was that my former husband's plane, when he was at work, crashed into the Golden Gate Bridge and he died. And this was before we moved out here. I'm now divorced. Everything happened out here. And it was this like, don't move out there.
Wow.
Things are going to happen out there. Your life is going to implode. And I rarely talk about that because there are people that they sit there and they're like, well, it's just a dream. No, 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 that wasn't just a dream. That was a
No.
premonition of which we don't listen to enough, right? Like we don't listen to our gut enough. And you did. Wow.
Well,
Wow.
children are inherently more in touch with
Yeah.
what's going on around them. And as we get older, we lose that sensitivity to emotion, and the world dampens our voice because we're told to live by certain brands and rules and different things. And so it starts to die off as people get older. Like some of the greatest books ever written, some of the greatest pieces of art, they're written in the 27, like they're written when people are young, because so you have to awaken yourself and almost really, really be in touch with your spirit to understand that it's all there. You're just blocking it.
Well, and I my former career was an art teacher. And so I get the whole creative space. And I was teaching art
Yeah.
at the time. And so that I remember waking up and just thinking, I don't think we're supposed to move. Like I don't this isn't gonna work. And we
Yeah, isn't
did.
that a lovely thing to hear? Because you got to just follow it. You have to. And if you don't, you learn to do it. And that's in business too, an opportunity. Like something will tell you to do it, and there's no reason that you should. But you got to listen to it, because listening to it and being wrong is okay. It's worse to not do something and then wonder what would have happened if you were right about that, in a good way. The premonitions in a good way.
100% agree. So take us back to, and I don't want to take you back too far into it just because I know
Yeah, yeah.
very, very traumatic as well. But take us back into that as a 12-year-old, you come out of this. You're one of very few. I mean, almost
Mhm.
everybody died. That's why
Mhm.
when I was texting my dad last night, my dad worked for IBM and there were a lot of IBMers on that flight. And so that struck him because he remembers that flight as well. And my brother is now a pilot. And so we were talking about, the things that pilots learn when it comes to flying as well from past mistakes. I mean, things that they didn't know. And so you're 12 years old, you wake up, you come into this realization of I had this premonition. And so what happens to you post that? 12 years old is that is, especially as a young man, that's a very, I mean, I've got three boys myself.
Mhm.
That's a hard age.
Yeah, to go back to your father too, to let your audience know. I mean, the leader of IBM was on that flight,
Yeah.
and what would have happened was they were positioning to get a deal done with Microsoft, and it was like the deal. Your father would know that it changed computing history forever. That flight, because the guy that passed away, the next guy that came in, killed the idea, because that's where it looked like Gates was going to go with Microsoft to IBM. And so they were really deep into negotiations, a lot of things. So that brings up something that's another thing. We think we're so much in control, but the butterfly effect of you go into one bar, you go into that one place, and it changes your life, right? And for me, that plane accident, I was already on a road, but it defined who I was going to become as an entrepreneur, because that doesn't happen. I come from a Midwest family. Things are good for me. Things are going well. There's no way that I would have chose to become an entrepreneur. So anyways, and we'll get to that later, but lying in the field, I was in Dallas Parkland Memorial Hospital in the burn unit. So the first thing was I'm lying in the field, hails on my face. I can't move or speak. Someone saves my life, pulls me out of the water right before I drown. And I think that the first thing my mother said to me when she saw me after I woke up out of the coma is I said, how about that 1 in a million chance? My mother just started whatever, and because she said it was 1 in a million, And she said to me these words. She said, one day we're going to find out what your life's purpose was. So I think that from that moment on, whether I was living reckless or whatever I was doing, I was subconsciously trying to find out what my purpose was. So when I was amongst other boys and we were jumping in pools or doing whatever, I just kind of knew, you guys don't know, do you? You don't understand. And this is a very common theme with people that have been through trauma. They'll see a relationship of someone in a healthy relationship. They're like, you really don't know what that's like, do you, to be in that situation? And so I think that you go through the survivor's guilt, you go through the problems. And I think that in today's age, we would have had MRIs, like literally, it was like, okay, put the kid in a little bit of counseling and he'll be fine. I mean, it was not, it was, and so I kind of found God about a year later because I beat up these kids in school. And, of course, they were I had my dad's necklace on and some kids tried to rip it off my neck. And so I beat them up. And then I got thrown out of the schools in South Florida. And my mother put me in a special school for kids or whatever. And this guy read this thing to me and he's like, get out of here. You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here, kid. You've got something else. God's got something special for you. And in those words, I felt like I had found God and that I was going to find my future one day. But it happened to be a very long journey, right? So left that school and sort of went on a very long odyssey of 15 years of a young man of failure and personal failure and substance abuse. And, just my life was teetering on the edge of problems. And then, of course, but at the same time, having faith in God. It was a wild mix, womanizing, because I had a problem with as a child, and so I didn't feel very close to my mother, so I really had no guidance. I left home when I was 16 years old. After my body healed a little bit, I just didn't have a lot of love in my life, and you'll find out that people that are doing big things in this world, like a lot of times they come from these places where life's going to teeter on the balance. You're going to go one direction or you're going to make something out of your life. And and usually there's a deep chip on your shoulder to these people that change the world or do something crazy. They want to prove that they're worthy of being here. Like they're just, even because like most people don't even think those thoughts. Of course I belong here. They don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I acted terribly tonight. I have a pit empty in my stomach. They just say, oh, I forgive myself. Bye, move on. That's what more people that come from trauma and crazy things, they really beat themselves up a lot. And they're out there to try to prove to the world that rebel voice inside of them, I've got to show that I'm worth it, that I survived for some reason. And that certainly was the case for me.
I wrote recently in a post, and people have a hard time believing this with me because I am a very, very happy person. And I wrote in a post that when everything hit in my life, when my trauma hit, I looked at my life and I had two things. I kept it simple. You're going to live or you're going to die.
Yeah.
And it was it. I kept it so simple because I had to. There was so much chaos. I was like, well, let's go all the way down to the bottom. Am I going to live or am I going to die? And I'm still here. And so clearly I need to live. And then it was this exploration from the pain of what is that going to look like for me? And what am I going to create from this? Because it wasn't only about me at that point. I realized that it was about something so much larger, and it was about other people. And it was about sharing that. And that is how it actually gave meaning to the pain that I had experienced, which the same with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the brokenhearted have that talk with themselves. I'm either going to, and they have it probably more than one time in their life.
Are you
the broken? What's that?
Every day. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, the brokenhearted, the people that have lost it all, the square pegs trying to fit into a round hole.
Yes.
They have these conversations with themselves that they need to as well. Like, a lot of things during those times, I realized that people that have been through a lot of things, it's probably best not to be in the underbelly too much, like to be around, crowds that are just not really focused on spiritual or awakening and bettering themselves and helping others, etc., and get into a little bit of narcissism or moving into the clubs and all this stuff. And we're all guilty of trying to live a normal life and trying to have fun and trying to make money. but really you have to be careful of that. And any people that have been through severe trauma, like it doesn't go away. You're not healed forever. Like, I've gone through stretches of life for 6 years where every day was the same. It was just fantastic. But enough pressure, enough loss, something happens. It's right around the corner. It just lives with me because it's in the DNA of my cells. It's right there, what had happened all those years later. So we have to be careful, And so I ended up homeless, pretty much self-induced. Like everyone thinks, oh yeah, you end up homeless because of alcoholism or drug addiction. That's not the way a lot happens for a lot of people. I mean, people lose hope and they give up and they just seen enough and they just have had it and they've lost their way. And that was the way. I went to the beach at 27 years old and I'd go into the ocean every night at sunset, and it had the same routine. And I'd hope that into the night I'd swim for an hour, and I'd hope that a shark would eat me. Like I literally wanted to go out. Like I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go out swimming. And I was like, after 30 days, I promised myself I'd never leave that beach until I knew I was going to come back a son of a bitch, that I was going to fight for myself, that I was going to tell my story through whatever means that was going to be, and that I was going to be hopeful for a better life. So after about 35 days, full beard, took the $20 and a plane ticket and I went to California. And that's where things eventually looked up.
So it's almost like you had to face yourself when you were swimming out there. It was like, I need to face myself and I need to know
100%.
I
mean, I had
many things that I understand with this. Like,
yeah.
I
had these
get
visceral
it.
screams, like I had these visceral screams, and of just, yeah, it was just like this moment in time. I could almost, here's what's crazy about stuff like that. People, you can go back and feel it again.
Yeah.
Like just talking about it right now, there was visceral screams at the end. Like once I was saying, I had to let it out. I had to pick up that towel of surrender and make it come back. So it was very, very real moment for me. And at that moment, if I walked off that beach, I knew, unless I was going to die, I was going to make something of I was never going to be back in that place again, ever. And I was going to fight for myself and use all of that pain, all of that misunderstanding, all of that I wasn't good enough or whatever. And I was going to go do something. I just didn't think it was going to be being an entrepreneur or a father. That's how it started. That's where it started after I decided to win again.
Wow. When I was paddling, I would do that same thing. I would paddle 4 miles out, sometimes at dark, sometimes in fog. Literally, I was like, well, let's just see if I can try that. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can find myself a little bit more in the darkness or in the fog. And I would sit out there on my paddleboard and just scream from the depths of and it was like this, which this is what I'm hearing from you too. And for those of you that are listening, it works. I mean, it really does.
It works.
It works.
You have to let it out. You got to let it out. That's why a lot of people that have been through a lot of things, you need to take up, no matter what people say, you got to take up extreme exercise to let it out. Pump your heart. Be alive. Get all the good energy through your soul. Let it go at night. Hit your knees and pray, and you'll get there. You'll come out of it and you'll be 10 times stronger for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. So you moved to California, get married. Tell us about this entrepreneur life, because I never thought I would be an entrepreneur either.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to do. And here I am.
Yeah. Well, the entrepreneurial journey was baked in me before Cape Farms, but my now wife came to me. She had 3 kids. I took on 3 of her stepchildren and we were moved in together. She had sort of a bad relationship, tough relationship. And so we were having fun. Like I was a tennis pro. I was teaching tennis, and she had money, and she came to me. She goes, "You really love me, because if you don't, I understand 3 kids, the whole thing, but I'm not getting any." He bankrupted the business, and he said he went to the judge, and the judge believed him that he only makes $60,000 a year. So we have no money, no child support, no nothing. And I said, "Are you serious?" First reaction was, "Wow, are you serious? I've really been enjoying going to Park City and having fun. Jesus, this has been great, taking me out for nice dinners, etc." I go, but number 2, I found out who I was also in that moment. I said the next day, I go, tennis is not going to cut it. Like $30 an hour lessons is not going to do it. So I started knocking on door to door to sell, and I'd never done that. So I built this painting company into this huge thing quick. And I realized, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a salesman. And then so by the time Kate came along, we got married, and then the doctors came and said Katie's, got cerebral palsy. And for the first 4 years, it was just tough. But then by year 5, she only weighed 15 pounds at 5 years old, and she was dying. Like, the doctors didn't have an answer, and they call it failure to thrive. And failure to thrive is when a blanket diagnosis, when they can't tell you there's no cancer, there's no nothing, like no matter what calories you put in a patient, they just keep losing weight, right? And this happens to a lot of older people. And so I read a book called The China Study, and I put the China Study down, and I go, oh my God, I know what's wrong with my daughter. And so what, to tell your listeners really quick, not to get too depth, it was the lead ingredient in Elmer's glue is casein. And so casein is a glue, acts as a glue in the body. And so Katie was having all these formulas, and they were all dairy based. So the dairy in people that are sedentary, it collects like glue in your body. So what happens is a very simple thesis. I wrote it, the paper was called Tree of Life. And it said, this glue is forming a mucus in her body, and you're putting all these extra calories in, and she keeps losing weight because she's getting more and more allergic and malabsorption to the body. And so I proved it. So I said, I took her off all the hospital formulas because she couldn't chew food, and she was on a feeding tube. And I went to the blender, and I said, okay, if you believe in God, okay, I believe in God, check. That means that God created all the things that come out of the ground. And it means that in all corners of the earth, I need to create a formula with all of these superfoods. Everyone's doing it in the blender at Whole Foods. Why weren't we giving it to our sickest people? It was the easiest thing I've ever seen. It was like, you didn't have to be a genius. So I took all these superfoods from around the world, went to the blender, took all the dairy out, and created the world's first ready to drink plant-based super shake. And so I took it to school in a mason jar called Kate's Cream. And within 30 days, she was off every medication. She was healthy and glowing. And I gave it to 100 patients, everyone the same way, in senior citizen homes. It was crazy, right? And the school board sat me down and said, look, if you continue to do this, we're going to send CCS after you, because I know we're going to send CCS out because you're not a doctor, and this is not in a closed container. This is in a mason jar. And I said, well, what do I have to do? They said, you have to start a company. So I said, okay, I'm starting the company. So I started the company. And then I knew that everyone was going to fight me. And so I built a big board and raised a couple $100 million and built the largest medical food company in the world, plant-based medical food company in the world, from my kitchen for $5,000.
So from $5,000. So did you know, okay, and this is why this is also very important for those people that are wanting to start businesses, that are wanting to step into that entrepreneur life. Did you know how to do any of this stuff? Did you go to school for this? Was this just like, I'm going to figure it out?
So my thing was, I was playing around with this idea that a switch had flipped. Like, they were talking about guys like me, and that ADD kids that were sort of misdiagnosed when they were like told that they were actually the smartest guy in the room, right? Like, so I could see that I could do certain things super, super smart. And so I started to visualize myself as, have you ever gone for a run, and you start to think of yourself as the big story, or you're the person who helped all these people? You know how we all fantasize about doing something good?
Yeah. 100%. I
Right.
totally know what you're saying. Yes.
Right. So we all, when we're trying to achieve and our spirit's on fire. And so that's the way I create a business. So I start out with, okay, I'm going to create the greatest formula in the world, and I'm going to help all these kids and people. And so I work from the end result backwards. I don't start from, because here's what happened. If I started from, are you good enough, or the doctors have to listen to me, or this, that, and the other, I learned as a child, no one will listen to that. No
Yes.
one's going to give me a chance. If I do I got to be extraordinary. I got to come from the end and tell the world I'm going to create the greatest formula in the world. I got to believe that. I got to own that. And then I'm going to work back the steps. And I believe that in God. So I'm going to create this super formula, and it's going to be hypoallergenic, and everyone's going to get well. And so I saw the future. I saw this billion-dollar company on day one. I knew it. So like I felt that. And so that's how if you get that crystallized belief in yourself, what happens is really weird. I would go in and listen to some business books and like, okay, I'm going to give you the plan. Da, 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 da. The people that can change the world and give you a chance to do big things, they want to feel your heart and spirit. So I went in and I would tell them, this is David versus Goliath. These guys are all wrong. I'm a father to save my daughter's life. And as soon as I started telling that story, everyone bought in. So that it was, what's crazy about my business career? The emotional side is what buys the hospitals in. It's what buys your partners in, your investors. They want to know that you're messy, that you're flawed, that you're real, that you're authentic, that you're fucked up. They want to feel that you get back up when you fail, that you admit your mistakes. No one wants the polished, perfect pitch and thing. It just doesn't work as much anymore. And so that's just my biggest advice, is that really believe that if you think that people that have achieved things like I have are special, it's only because they decided that they were going to become special, or not become, or that they were. And now I'm going to use this chip on my shoulder to prove to all of you that you were all wrong, and that actually I belong. I'm with the greats, and that's the end of the story. Like, so when I ended up in my new company and everything going a certain way, like, I became that person 12, 13 years ago. It didn't happen. I decided that day I was going to become the person.
Yeah. Reverse engineer. You have like
Reverse engineer.
Reverse engineer. I talk about that in my keynote speech for those of you that want to know.
Yeah, fake it till you make it, until you believe in yourself. Like but at some point you got to own it. The world's going to feel. And by the way, then there better be fruits from that belief, because if there's no fruits, that we've heard, that's the only difference between, if a guy's talking like me, you better be seeing some fruits, because if it's not, it's a fraudster or a cult leader.
Exactly.
And that's where the cult leaders, and they don't have anything deep internal. They don't have anything real to talk about. And so they just talk bullshit and there's nothing behind it. So I think that there's when someone real is walking in the room and talking, it. You can feel it.
Yeah. Wow. So do you sell this company?
Yeah, so I sold my shares. I wanted to tell my final story, and my final story was, everyone said, "Well, everyone brace yourself." K Farms went on to be the largest plant-based medical food company in the world. My legacy was secure. I never had to work again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in the boardroom,
there's always
what's
a
that?
But
Well, I was in the 68th floor of Goldman Sachs building, Series C, Cape Farms, and I was looking around, and everyone was playing by the book, playing very conservative, and I felt that the final story I wanted to tell was that everyone was telling this is a love story of a father, but it wasn't a love story. Cape Farms was a love story for sure, because I love my daughter. If I lost her, I thought I was going to die, but it was an anger story. It was a rebel story. It was a person that everyone said, why you come up with the disruptive formula that Nestle and Abbott are going to have to take serious? And yes, I had the answer. Oh my God, that I don't have a doctor, a dietitian license. Like, sometimes we have to look beyond the credentials and look at the realities. And I think that a lot of terrible things happen in this world when everyone just follows 10 people that have all the credentials. And some of the world's history's biggest things, Hitler, everything that goes bad, is when people don't look and question why we're following a leader or some dogma of some bad or stuff that's outdated. So sitting there in the 68th floor, and there's a guy that founded a water company called Liquid Death, and I felt that a guy put death on a can. It was such a bold thing. It was something I would do. And I was like, and I saw that it was resonating with the young, and I felt that energy drinks were very no story driven. It was just basically, caffeine and bro products. And Celsius was making waves because Celsius was about for girls, and it was about having a salad and saying, like, there was no heartfelt stories or no realness to it. And so my son gave me a bracelet in Park City and 5 years ago Christmas, and I'm in this sprawling house, not homeless on the beach anymore, big roaring fireplace, and he said, Dad, everybody thought you were the unluckiest guy in the world, but you're the lucky fuck. And so I went to create this breakthrough product, the best energy drink, which is taking off like crazy. And I was about to go to market, and everyone's wondering, what's Richard going to call this thing? And I decided, you know what? I'm putting that bracelet on the can. And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to start this huge controversy. Everyone started writing me, why would you do this to your legacy? And they were missing the point.
Yep.
Is that's the point. We need to look beneath the cover of the individual, the corporation, that a cuss word's not morality, that the person that's got a tattoo and riding a Harley could be the greatest guy on the planet, and some of the biggest killers I've seen in boardrooms appear to be the nicest people. And that love and all these things of perseverance have nothing to do with what car I drive and politics and left and right. And I want to tell this final story, which is, you could be anything you want to be if you have the courage to believe that you can get back up and be anything. And that perseverance and guts and honesty, these are the traits that made me get all my dreams to come true. And so what I wanted to do is tell it through this sort of brash story with a great product and get everyone's attention. And then what I wanted to do is pull sort of an Andy Kaufman, which was, I knew I was going to put a tape over the F word on the can, but I thought it was going to be a year later. And what we decided to do was to cover the F on the can, and it's now called the Lucky Energy Company. And now everybody's calling. So I'm getting in every store and everyone's buying it. And it's gone crazy, but and got a ton of funding and everything. And that's where I tell your listeners too, like, it's very hard to start your first business to get people to believe in you. But eventually, if you do persevere and you do never give up, for sure, that it will get easier as an entrepreneur. Like, investors know that I will always come to them with news that is not good, that I'm trustworthy with capital. And so now this trip's a little bit easier. I've got a lot of big investors, and the consumers are loving it.
It's so freaking cool. It's stories like this that just make me go, damn, it's so freaking cool. I remember the very first time. So I take people down into the Grand Canyon on retreats. I'm actually running my very last one in June. I say that, right? And with
not the last one, maybe it's gonna be a few more.
Well, I've been doing these for so long, and now I'm stepping into keynote speaking and other things, just because I feel like, even my clients tell me that, like, your stage is bigger and you got to get out there more. And so here we are. And so I remember, though, Richard, the very first time I took people down in, and everyone questioned me. They were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You're a mom. You've got 3 kids. You've gone through a divorce. Like, you can't do this. You're a woman. That was the other thing. You're a woman. And I just knew it was like this spark inside of me that I do also believe started at age 10. I remember having the feeling at age 10 that something bigger was going to happen. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I had to go through all these different things to write the book, to create the story, to have the story be created for me so I could then do the work that I'm doing. And I remember being at the bottom of the GC, I called the GC the Big Ditch, and people were questioning me. People that work down there question me there. They're like, what voodoo shit are you doing down here? Like, what is this stuff you're doing? That's what they would say. And I'm sure you've had the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Who are you to think that you can do this? Why are you doing this? Did you go to business school? Like,
that's right.
For me, it was, do you have a psychology degree? And I'm like,
right.
No, my life is better than a psych book. Like, come on. And so going through all of that, and then I remember just like a year or two ago, I was at the bottom, and this guy came up to me. He actually managed a lot of the places where we stay down at the bottom, Phantom Ranch. And he said, my wife follows you. She's read your book. I love what you're doing.
That's great.
Do you do courses? How do you certify people? And, could I have gotten bigger and done a certification for the work that I do? Yes. That said, for me, it was such a heart and soul thing. It's been such a heart and soul thing.
Yeah.
my choice to do it the way that I do it. And the same with you. Like it's your choice to do it the way that you do it. And you have a reason for doing it this way and for
Yeah.
putting the world in this way. And I can imagine that that 12-year-old kid, right, that also had that premonition is also working through all of the ways, helping you in business and leading you and guiding you into like, no, this is the way it needs to be done. This is the way that it needs to be said. This is the way that it needs to be heard.
Yeah, I think you and I think very alike. I mean, like it's got to be Frank Sinatra's My Way, and
Oh my
because
God, it's my
because
favorite song.
it's got to be that way because at the end of the day, if I called it Lucky Fella, that's not the story. It's way
No.
grittier and way gnarlier. And your story is about the way you want to do it, the way you want to speak, because these things go from one step to another, to another, to another. And you don't know, like by going Lucky Fella, I don't have really a chance to really impact the people like I can now. Like we get stories of people writing us in and posting things and like, this guy survived a plane crash. And you don't know when you put millions of cans out there, like I'm doing, you don't know the impact you can make on one person's life. A lot of times when I was completely down, I didn't have anyone coming to me and telling me the potential that I could be. And so that's the message we do on these things called Manic Mondays and Fucking Up Fridays on Instagram, excuse me. But Manic Monday is about the highest suicide rate is Monday morning. And so what I do is tell people that you're going to get back up. You're going to do this. And we really, really get into them. And then on Friday, it's a celebration of life. You made it through week. And so we dance and we have all these videos. And so that was exactly why I decided to call it Likey Fuck, because I wanted to have that conversation with the Christian mother that said, why couldn't you call it something else? You don't believe in God, you're full of it. And then I get to tell her, actually, you know what? You know, someone like she said, like another guy said to me, he goes, what would God say if he heard you say those words? And I go, look, I'm not afraid to sit down and tell God that sorry for, but that I'm normal and that I'm flawed and that I'm human. And I'm not afraid of that conversation. And so people love that in the end, that they're talking to someone authentic. They can at least stick by their guns and take the heat for good or for bad. And so, and now people are mad at me. Now people are criticizing me that I took F off the can. But I did that it's a sticker and it speaks for censorship. And that censorship it's usually bad. It's usually bad to censor. We just need to take it out. I just took it off because I didn't think it was appropriate to have that and 8-year-olds going by the aisle to look at the can. That's the only reason why I did it. Otherwise, I would never have done that. And I wanted to talk about censorship a little bit. But
Yeah. Yeah. So can we go full circle and just tap into one thing here because I do have a lot of business people that also listen to this and
mhm,
going back to the IBMer that was on the plane
mhm.
and the fact that I didn't know this. I didn't realize that they were actually on the flight to go have to create the deal. Like I didn't know that. And so how do you there's this reconciliation that happens
I know.
in my life too. And it's this, yeah, you totally just that, right? There's this
I know. Yeah.
reconciliation that happens. So let's dive into that for a moment. And
Sure.
I just passed the baton. There you go.
I think I can reach. I think what you're trying to say is how do we not overthink, like how do we submit to the fact that we're possibly out of control of a lot of things in our life.
Yes.
And then we have another side of ourselves that's trying to control outcomes. Because people in trauma or been through different things, they really need to control parts of their life. Because if we just all went around going out every night, life is free and forgive yourself for doing everything, just do it again, right? And trying to control outcomes all the time. And so yeah, I think that's a tough one that I struggle with, right? So I think I have to keep open to the idea that I'm on a path, and ultimately that path is out of my control for how those things end up in the big 50,000 foot view of it. Now, I could change the outcomes by working hard or by, not eating a cheeseburger if I want to lose weight or not smoking a cigarette if I want to get healthy. But then you think about my plane crash, and I say that for a reason because everyone that lived was a smoker or right because all the children died 31 kids and they didn't have any other children in the back other than me, but everyone that decided to smoke a cigarette, how weird is that, in the tail of the plane, or those are our survivors.
Yeah.
So the butterfly effect of all these things is the unknowns. We have to keep a part of ourselves open to the idea that we're on this journey. We're not in control of a lot. We're in control of our daily actions. We're in control of how you leave this conversation, how I make you feel. If I make your listeners feel comfortable that they could be incredibly special, and they are special, and that they need to tap into becoming that winner that they see themselves in the future today. Own that's who you are in your behaviors today. But we don't know what's around the corner, and we don't know if we miss that flight that plane could crash, or if we don't go into that bar we meet the love of our life, or we miss the love of our life. And so I think the reconciliation is that you need to be out of the outcomes business. So Andre Agassi wrote a book about that. When he went from some drugs and drinking, and he's 130 in the world, and he spun out, and when he made a decision to come back, it wasn't to become number one in the world. It was to become better 1% every day. 1%. Not to give up every bad habit. Not to, I'm okay, now Richard says this, so now I'm going to be this way as an entrepreneur. It's to get a little bit better. We're on a process here. And that he was not, if he won or if he became number one in the world or he lost, he was happy because he did the best he could to prepare himself to win.
Right.
And that's what taking chances, the risk takers of this world, if they fail, it's not as bad as if they never tried. And so to try is the biggest, to give yourself a chance to become a winner, to start that business, to ask that girl on the date, to stop self-sabotaging yourself. You're giving yourself the best chance, and all you should do is try to be better than yesterday. And then if we lose, or unfortunately if we die, or something bad happens, or someone we love dies, we know that we're doing the best we can. That's the best answer I can give on that.
It's amazing. That's exactly right. That's what a way. What an incredible way to end this conversation in just a moment. Because I've been there, and I hear that, like, seriously, to my soul, I hear that. It's there are many times in life when we want to give up, where we're just like, I'm done, peace out. I don't even understand. And it's taking that step forward, that also that belief in yourself and knowing that there is light on the other side of it. And some things we'll never understand. I mean, and that's okay. Like, I think that that's actually okay.
Yeah, one of the things too, like, I was witnessing this guy that had it all at this golf club, and he was really unhappy and yelling at waiters, and he was sort of drunk, and he's got the $100,000 gold watch, and he's got the car and the beautiful girl with him. And I looked at my friend that was struggling, and I said, unless he inherited, the reason why he's here right now, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 times, is because some point in his life when he was younger, before he had all these things, he was living differently. And so now that he's on top, he doesn't know that he's going to lose it all. Because who we are today, what we're doing today is a reflection of what's going to show up in 5 years. That universal principle of the law of attraction is very real. And it just doesn't come into your life right away. Like, the behaviors and things I was doing, and the rich thoughts that I had, and the soul crunching conversations with myself when I was poor and fighting hard for Katie, I got those things 10 years later. They didn't show up the next day. So what we want to do is try, no matter what position we're in, that guy that's at the clubhouse doing that, he's a loser. And the guy that's sitting there fighting for his family and working $10 an hour and thinking big thoughts and having conversations like you and me, reading the tapes, reading the books, didn't go to the right school, but he's a winner. That's the winner. That's the people we want to strive to be, is the habits and the things. And and let God or let our destiny do the rest, because that other guy none of us want to be.
Yeah. This may have been one of my favorite conversations I've had. Like I can't wait to message Karen and be like, yo, this is like one of the best conversations I've had. And I got to tell you, I've had some pretty amazing, I've got incredible guests on. And then there are people that you just sit with and you're like, man, this could go on for hours because I just relate. I get it. I've been there.
Yeah.
It's so,
Yeah, I could do a lot of. Next time we'll do a side discussion off air, and I'll learn about your story and hear you talk and kind of learn a little bit more, so I can get some more perspective. But you and I can finish each other's sentences with this type of
oh,
stuff, and it's a lot of crazy stuff
a
we've
lot of,
seen, right?
a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of crazy
Yeah.
stuff. And you know what's really cool is that it brought us to this conversation right now. Like, that's what's really cool. I always sit with that. I'm like, if you hadn't gone through all of that, and if I hadn't gone through all of that, and we had those intersecting, I remember when that plane crashed, and I remember having these conversations because I was afraid of flying. And then my dad or my brother ended up becoming a pilot. And then he talked to me all about, well, this is what happens. You're okay, da, 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 all the things. And it just like, dang, it's just so cool. The world is
Destiny is so destiny, and the butterfly effect and all these things we're all so intertwined together, and we're all looking for the same thing, which is a better quality life. And we all fall down, and we all have our ups and downs. And it's really important to embrace that side of you, because if you're just a robot going through life every day, the dreamer in you's kind of died. The romance of life, I think, is the comeback, is the fight, is what are we going to become? What are these dreams that we're going to have? How are we going to learn? How are we going to learn from the relationships that failed and the relationships that won? And these are the things that are really cool to me.
magic. That's the magic right there. Wow. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners with? And then also, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's the best place to follow if you'd like to sort of watch, our Manic Mondays and F It Up Fridays, and sort of see the brand take off. We're moving across the country with DSD's. Budweiser is bringing us across the country. I've got Amazon, Lucky Energy, and the company is just it's really, really exciting, the adventure. But you can find us on Instagram and follow the story. Probably be doing a lot more of this as we move forward. My biggest goal is to inspire people to never settle for the idea that certain people are special, and that we're running out and we haven't made our lives the way we want to. It's bullshit. This is what we have, is one chance to do it in this life, but we never give up, and we always believe in ourselves. So come follow us on the journey. Lucky Energy, Amazon, you can try us out, or you could get on Instagram and try out our being inspired by our thoughts.
Awesome. And is there any last bit of wisdom that you want to share with everybody? I mean, you've already dropped a million of them in here, so I don't even know what's left, but I'm sure.
I just think never give up. I mean, that's really it. That as long as you have that, there's some people just don't have the spine and they give up. Just don't ever give up on yourself. Like, that's the comeback in you is such an American story. America is the place where you can fall down and lose it all, lose love and lose it all, and come out, fit and love, wealthy, happy children, and find your place in the world. So that's why I'm doing this. And that's why I'm going to try to create the biggest. People are like, why are you trying to create another billion-dollar company? I go, well, because if I create a billion-dollar company, it means I touched millions of people. That's why. That's what I'm trying to do, because my life is not going to change. I get to be with my daughter. I save her life. My life became the victory story a long time ago. I have to figure out my habits sometimes. I mess up doing this or overeating or whatever, going out here and there too much. But the dream the dreams came true for me from down and out to making it. And I hope everyone gets to feel that.
Love it. Love your why. I love it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you for being on with us. Can we do this again sometime? Let's like have another side conversation, even if it's short. Do you mind? Would
Yeah,
you
I'd
be
love to
available?
do it. I'd love to. Why don't you check in like in less than 6 months? I've got a
Yeah,
after the NAS show, I've got a lot of things I'm going to share, and so there'll be new stuff to share with everyone. And then and your audience can probably watch the journey for a little bit and find out what the company's
amazing.
all about.
Love it.
But
I
yeah,
love,
I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it offline and online with you
yeah, that
again.
would be amazing. Thank you. I love bringing guests back on that are this inspiring because my listeners love that too. I get like so much good stuff off of it. So just helping all the people. So
Yeah,
thank you.
well, you really are. Well, you really are, and it's been almost like a therapy session. So thank you so much.
Once.
I needed it.
I've
I
heard
needed
that
it.
more than once. I've heard that people are like, yo, I didn't know this about myself. Thank you for this conversation. I'm like, well, that's why we do it too. So
I almost teared up. Like so I had to like when I was even telling the story. I become a robot sometimes, but you got me in the environment, a trauma conversation. So I think it's really important to for people to have this. So thank you.
yeah, thank you too. I appreciate it.
Till next time, Sarah. Bye, your audience. Thank you so much for everything. Bye.
Thank you so much.